This is eCoffee with Experts, where marketers and founders share what's actually working in SEO, AI, and digital growth. Grab your coffee and fuel your mind as we chat with top minds about their wins, struggles, and lessons you won't find in a blog post. Brought to you by Digital Web Solutions, we bring real talk to help you grow your business, one episode at a time. Let's get started.
Welcome in.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Everyone is talking about AI, EO, GEO, SEO. I'm curious because you do a lot of traveling and you have a very diverse background in music, which I also am a drummer and very interested in DJing. I'm curious what you have learned about the human condition throughout your travels, throughout your journey, and how does it apply to what people are doing in terms of searching?
It's an interesting question. I think, searching, I guess like fundamentally what we do in our space is help people find what they're looking for and answers to questions that they might have. And as we've learned throughout the SEO space in 25 years of doing this, is that people have seemingly infinite questions about everything related to how the world works and how, interpersonal questions and cultural questions, political questions. Like there's so many, different types of ways that people use search and now AI products. So I think it's been really exciting to be in this space because, humans are curious and our job is to help companies and brands and people really ensure that their message is getting in front of the people that are looking for answers. And it's harder than it sounds. There's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. With everything that's happening with, again, all the acronyms that I just mentioned, on top of content, good structured schema, a good linking profile, is there anything that you're seeing that is really driving outsized results other than kind of like the base level that everybody knows?
Yeah, I think there's certain websites that are at a pretty big advantage when it comes to AI search visibilities. For example, like Reddit and Quora, right? Like there's websites that have like just vast databases and, vast amounts of information related to what people are sharing online. So user generated content, real authentic experiences and conversations. And I feel like large language models tend to really cite that type of information, or they're leaning very heavily into sites like Reddit and Quora and user generated content because they do want to kind of like create that kind of human conversational experience. And also that's where a lot of like really specific answers to questions really exist on the internet. But if you're not those sites, I think there's a lot of sites that do really well in SEO. I would say like Healthline being a big example, or some other major publisher sites where they've spent many years perfecting, how they structure their content, how they make it very readable for users. And it seems like AI tools, large language models, are also really ingesting content in similar ways. So I feel like the way that content is structured and the depth and breadth of content is also very important as well.
Yeah. And is it always about answering a question? Because sometimes when you go to Reddit, which I love Reddit, I spend a lot of time on Reddit, not so much Quora, but sometimes I'm there, yes, to find an answer, but a lot of the times I'll just like, Michael Jackson meme, eat the popcorn in the comments and just see, like, just learn about how people are approaching a problem and not necessarily how they're solving it. So for brands, they're able to create content that provides an answer, but is there another approach that's just more like broad educational brand building, that gets picked up by AIs?
Yeah, I think like as it relates to, the Reddit approach, a lot of people are asking like how to be visible in there. And I think a lot of people are asking the wrong questions because, to your point, there's a lot that happens on Reddit as it relates to like interpersonal like relations and conversations and everything, where brands can learn a lot just based on how people are kind of conversing with each other. And I think actually AI tools are probably learning in similar ways. But yeah, as far as like the AI models go, I think at the end of the day, like they're really trying to kind of like mimic and emulate how people think and what people talk about and the way people approach problems as well. So I think the more that you can kind of like put yourself through that journey as, like as a user of a certain brand's products or whatever, and kind of like emulate that in your content strategy. So you're really kind of checking all the boxes as far as like, what are all the different things that people might be asking as they go through this experience, or people want to buy this product or whatever it is that you're promoting on your website. And that's, maybe we'll get into it later, but like with AEO and GEO, there's a lot of people talking about like query fan out, which is basically this concept of like, you asked one question, but there's a lot of built-in questions that kind of stem out from that. How can you kind of tackle all those simultaneously in your content? Interesting times. It's an extension of what we've already been doing in the SEO space for a long time, but there's a lot of new tools and new considerations for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm going to ask you about those tools and those considerations a little bit later, but it almost seems like with this query fan out, there is a strategy to almost like doing keyword research but reverse engineering, right? And it's not just like on this specific keyword. Is there a strategy that you're using or something that comes to mind that is almost like a reverse engineered strategy to capture all those, longer tail keywords, I suppose, in places like Quora and Reddit?
Yeah. So this is actually kind of an extension of what we've already been doing with SEO keyword research for a long time and what a lot of the SEO tool providers have already given us for many years. So for
Mhm.
example, if you use Ahrefs or SEMrush or also asked or like different keyword research tools that have a filter for generating questions, or they
Mhm.
actually just only generate questions, which is what also asked does. Or
Mm.
like also asked is using Google's people also ask, which is like a question generator based on the
Mhm.
keyword that you typed in. So like there's already tools that exist to do this, and I don't think they're too different from query fan out. And the thing about query fan out is it's not going to be 100% the same from user to user. It depends on search history and context and the user's personalization and everything as well. So I think those tools are still kind of the best place that we can go to get an idea of when someone's typing this, what are the subsequent questions that they might be asking.
Mhm.
But there are new tools that people are creating that are more like AI generated, like using Gemini. I know like Dan Petrovic in our industry has made a really cool free query fan out kind of emulator. So there's
Hmm.
new tools that are popping up, but fundamentally, I think they all kind of do the same thing, which is just to like extrapolate, from one question, what are the 10 or 20 kind of subsequent questions that the user might be thinking about?
Mm, mm. And so there's obviously the tool and also asked, I wrote that down. There's tools that use or that get those answers. How do you feel about community aspect, and almost like bridging the gap between organic social and SEO? Because a lot of this, it sounds like a lot of this content is actually coming from real users generating their own user generated content. Is there kind of a gray area? And I have a follow-up question to that, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think it's been going in this direction for a long time already. If you look at the visibility of social media sites in Google search, pretty much all of them have been growing consistently
Mm,
for the last few years. And then you have new things like Threads, which is growing rapidly.
mhm,
And so Google shows all kinds of X posts and LinkedIn posts, and now I can index public Instagram profiles, right? So, like when people produce user generated content and social media content, that tends to do well in search for certain types of queries, especially if you're asking like what someone said about something. Obviously, it's going to look at
mm,
their social media for that. And the AI tools also look at social media for that. So, I think there's a lot that you can do, number one, just by like inspiring conversations,
mm,
like if the brand does something really interesting or really exciting or something that they're really proud of and it gets a lot of people talking on Reddit and X and Threads and whatever, like that's going to make its way into SEO performance, it's going to make its way into AI performance. So I think that's branding, right? And
mhm,
having a good social media strategy. But yeah, you want to create conversations, contribute to conversations, have the people that work at your company also like contributing expert commentary in different places. Like at Amsive, we talk a lot about like how can we all use our personal LinkedIn to kind of like amplify what we're trying to get across as a brand. So I think that social and search they've already been kind of intertwined, but I think that's becoming increasingly true over time.
mm. I love that. And at Amsive, you guys work with massive companies, but there's also some mid-market in the mix, right? You have a huge client base. For some of those smaller companies, maybe even some of them are founder-led. You mentioned using your LinkedIn profile to further your company's message. How can, like, for our audience, a lot of our audience is agency owners and, leaders of marketing departments in smaller companies. How can they use their, I guess, personal brand as a founder specifically without like doing TikTok dances, I guess, and without publishing a blog where the author is, the company?
That's actually something that I've been advocating for as an organic marketing strategy for a really long time. I would say this became increasingly important and something that Google in particular started to pay a lot of attention to around like 2018 or so when they introduced this concept of what they called EAT, so expertise, authority, and trust, which now is experience, expertise, authority, and trust. But basically, like
Mm,
the main takeaway with that is like they want to know who's publishing the content. They want to know that they can trust the people that are publishing the content. And they want to, obviously, there's a lot of advanced technology involved in doing all of this, but understand like who are the reputable authors in certain spaces, who are the reputable brands, which authors work at which brands, right? So, like, the more that you can kind of establish yourself as a thought leader, an expert, someone that contributes expert top content on these topics, that's going to be rewarded. And they're going to be able to make that connection between you and the company that you work for. So there's all kinds of examples of this when someone is kind of like the face of the company and they're going out there and they're speaking at conferences and they're providing a lot of industry research and they're on videos and they kind of become synonymous with that company in many examples.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Google in particular is really looking for, because that's the opposite of having inauthentic, anonymous, homogenous, AI generated content, which their users don't usually love.
Right. Authenticity, like bringing it down from the corporate level and meeting people where they're at, right? With UGC. I'm curious how search differs globally. Are there trends, that are in different parts of the world that are, I guess different than here in the US? I mean, how does that differ when you're talking about different markets?
There's so many ways to answer that question, but yeah, it's absolutely different in different places. I mean, for one, like search engines and like the search experience is different in different places just based on the access to information that they have in that language and those regions and everything like that. So
Mm,
I know like in the SEO space, people have a lot more luck, let's say, manipulating or spamming search results in smaller countries, right? If you're going to launch a
mm.
website in Indonesia, you're probably going to be able to rank more quickly than you are in the United States, right? So it's like there's
Sure.
less
Nice.
competition in certain markets or whatever, but there's also things like GDPR in Europe. So there's different things that can and can't happen on Google in the EU.
Hmm.
You have countries where Google's not allowed, like China, right? So it completely depends.
Yeah,
I
right.
think fundamentally, and especially now with like large language models, people are becoming very accustomed to using search engines and large language models to ask everything about everything in their lives, right? So that's kind of the
Yeah.
direction that it's going.
Yeah. Everything about everything is a great way to put it. Kind of shifting gears, you're leading a big team at Amsive. What do you look for in today's SEO? And I guess I'm asking, like, are certifications still important? Is a degree still important? Yeah. Again, like, what do you look for in an SEO when you're bringing them on the team?
It's a great question. Think so that's like kind of hotly debated, but I've been in a position of helping hire professional SEOs now for maybe 13 or 14 years. And I think it helps to have a college degree in some ways because you learn certain skills at college, at the very least interpersonal skills that I think are very important for working on a team. But
Mm.
I think it's been a while since that hasn't been like 100% necessary all the time, right?
Right. Right.
There's certain ways that you can, especially now, you can teach yourself new skills online and you can build things and test things and put things to the test without having to have that degree. And you can be a
Hmm.
fantastic SEO. So there's definitely exceptions to that. And I wouldn't say that there's really any like industry standard, right? Like degree or certification that we're looking for because there just isn't one. Like there's certain courses that are out there that are relatively
Hmm.
trustworthy and there's certain people I know that are putting out courses that I do trust. The problem with SEO courses is that can you imagine if you built an SEO course 2 years ago? It would not be interesting or relevant at all
Is it relevant?
today. Right.
Yeah.
And like if you ever wonder why I have no courses, that's the literal reason why. I've been
Yeah.
approached many times in my career about making courses and I'm always like the thing that I said yesterday is going to change tomorrow. It's just not the best use of my time to teach. So I think I wouldn't look for any specific certifications, but obviously if someone's doing the work of like getting analytics certified, right? Or
Mm.
taking certain courses that are like pretty trustworthy, like brands that are putting out SEO fundamental courses, like that's going to be helpful. But I would
Hmm.
say it's much more impressive to us, like when we're hiring to see what have you actually done? What tests
Hmm.
have you run? What have you built on your own? What have you done in your previous roles? What are some case studies that you can share with us?
Yeah, I love that. And speaking of the internal operations of a team and like building things out, building workflows to be more efficient, right? We can help a client raise revenue, but we can also internally like reduce our expenses through efficiencies and workflows. Are there any workflows that you've seen like being produced internally that help your team run more efficiently or I guess yeah, just deliver better results?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's been like the main kind of like change really this year with what we're working on with our
Mm,
team is like it's the hot new topic in the SEO space, which is like really how do we automate a lot of the work that we've been doing. And there's a lot of pros and cons, right? And there's a lot of I mean, I would say for our team in particular, we're very sensitive to like not automating things that shouldn't be automated, because automation can get you in a lot of trouble with SEO if not done correctly. And we don't like to take risks with our clients. In fact, one of the main things that our team focuses on at Amsive is helping companies who have taken too many risks that got in trouble and they need to get back in the good graces of Google or other search engines. And like, we don't want to put them in that position in the first place. So we're very, very careful about like making sure there's always that human oversight in all the work that we do. But definitely a lot of like the more menial or like mundane keyword research, or like technical auditing, things like this that can sort of be automated to an extent, or at least the beginning parts can be automated. We're absolutely exploring ways of doing those processes more quickly.
For sure. And I think it's a good point that you bring up, which I didn't know, that you're specifically helping companies that have taken risks and they've kind of gotten in trouble. And, you're one of the people who has always been a proponent of like, read the instruction manual, like do what's right, obviously, based on what these algorithms and platforms are coming out with. The general idea is write good content, follow the rules, execute on the fundamentals really well, and you're not going to have a problem getting the results that you need. It's when people try and grab too much or bite off more than they can chew that they're going to get into trouble. Algorithm updates or penalties or anything like that. I guess, are there common risks that you see companies take or are taking now to try and maximize their results because of new AIs or like, different, I guess, backdoor strategies that are getting them in trouble without them really knowing?
Yeah.
But it's going to come back to bite them in the butt. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the cycle of SEO. I've actually done a handful of presentations earlier this year that were literally called that, the cycle of SEO. So it's like people, especially new people, that realize that there's an opportunity with SEO. It's like a gold rush. So a lot of new people that enter in with AI, for example, and say, wow, I can make a lot of money online. So I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to create all kinds of content. Now I can use AI to create content really quickly, and I'm going to scale that as quickly as possible. And it's a bit like gambling, right? You're like, oh, it's working. I'm going to keep doing more, right? And maybe it is working for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. Maybe there are ways to make money and traffic and everything in the short term. But generally speaking, almost always that catches up to you, and at some point it's going to drop off dramatically. Sometimes there are new exploits and new tactics that people find that haven't yet been patched up, by companies like Google. So there's like a little grace period where you can get away with certain exploits for a while. But we, like on the agency side, we're an agency. We work with brands. We work with companies that can't really approach their marketing strategy in that way because they can't afford to lose everything. There's like kind of like, it's really important in the SEO space to understand there's a certain category of people that are working with sites and on projects where they can risk everything. And it's okay if they lose everything because they just start a new project, right? On the agency side, we can't take those risks. So for us, it's all about risk mitigation. We don't want to do anything that could get our clients in trouble. And a lot of that has to do with like projecting out based on the documentation. Like, this doesn't feel like something that search engines would really like. Even if it's working right now, it might not work in 3 months. So we don't want to take that risk. We want to do things properly. We want to do things in a way that's really going to feel good for your users, right? So I think that's like one thing that people don't really realize about SEO. There's a lot of different colors of SEO and a lot of different approaches based on the types of companies and websites that you're working with.
I love that. It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
Spectrum. Sure. Yeah. You mentioned something in there where you're like, look at the documentation in the past, which I watched your Brighton SEO UK presentation, which was awesome, right? You dug back into the history, and history can tell us what the future may hold. History repeats itself, whatever other cliches you want to say. Are there, based on what you're looking at in the past, maybe just a recap for the audience, like what is it that you think is coming in the future, or what potential opportunities and risks might there be with algorithm changes and AI?
Yeah. I think the biggest unknown right now is a lot of what I speak about is Google, right? That's been the biggest player in the space for a very long time. And by extension, Bing is obviously a big player. And fundamentally, a lot of the ways that Bing approaches search quality is very similar to Google. So when I'm speaking about Google, I'm almost always like, this also kind of includes Bing. There's some differences, but as far as how they approach quality, it's generally the same. And, mitigating spam and things like that. What we don't know now is that there's some new players, right? So we have OpenAI, we have Anthropic, we have Perplexity. Like, we don't exactly know what spam fighting looks like and is going to look like with these companies. We know that obviously LLM spam and poisoning is a thing. It's going to become an increasingly bigger thing. I think we're in a new era of that right now. But, the reason why these companies fight spam in the first place is to give their users a better experience. So we should probably assume that they're going to do more as far as mitigating spam and people poisoning the models. So what I'm seeing a lot of in the space right now, especially with like new people that are coming into the space and calling themselves GEO experts, even though they've been doing this for a week, right?
Yeah.
Is they're recommending tactics that to me look like spam. I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't feel comfortable doing some of those tactics with my clients on the Google side.
Mhm.
And if you're exclusively focused on ChatGPT and you say, well, it works on ChatGPT, it works on ChatGPT for now. I mean,
Mhm.
ChatGPT 5 came out, what, like 5 days ago, 4 days ago?
Yeah.
It's already feeling like it's better at not elevating spam than ChatGPT 4 was. So we
Yeah.
have to assume that these companies are right, like trying to move things in a direction where they're trying to reduce poisoned data and manipulated
Sure.
data.
Sure.
It's really important to approach these new like trades like GEO and AEO and everything in a way where you're not setting yourself up for failure because what you're
Mhm.
doing now is going to get you in trouble in 6 months.
100% agree with that. When you're talking, can you give me an example of like a specific tactic without maybe naming names or calling anybody out? I'm just curious, like what you mean or what you've seen, or yeah, a
Yeah.
specific tactic that might be seen as spammy or yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like in the most spammy example, and there's been some studies about this already. It turns out I don't know if this has already been fixed, but like large language models can't tell when there's white text on a white background, right? It's SEO from 1995. You can put
Mm,
spam into a page with white text on a white background, so users can't see it, but large language models theoretically can extract that text and use that text in
huh.
whatever way. So that's like literal, just like black hat spam from 20 years ago. It seems to be
Yeah.
working or had worked, has shown indications that it's working in the last year. I'm sure they're patching that up now. But there's stuff that's a little bit less egregious and things that for me make me raise an eyebrow. Like I wouldn't necessarily do it with my clients. So you're going to see right now a lot of companies that have figured out that if you publish a blog post on your own company blog and maybe you support that with a bunch of press releases or you call your friends and you have them or pay your friends and they do blog posts or whatever and you want to be the number one best HR hiring software, right? You put on your own blog, we're the number one best HR hiring software company. You pay 5 other blogs to say they're the number one, right? And now large language models see it 5 times and now they're number one. Like, I don't think
Mm,
that's great for your audience. I don't think that's great for your users. And I think eventually large language models will figure out how to solve that problem. But for now, it's working.
mhm.
So there's a lot of people exploiting that, a lot of people kind of promoting those types of pages. And I do think we're going to see that that's going to not only not work in the future, but we might see that sites engaging in those types of behaviors are maybe like left out of future training data or not cited as frequently.
Mm, yeah. Man, some of that stuff is just crazy. Like you're talking about that black hat tactics or things that are just like, man, it's kind of slimy, you know?
Always. That's why SEOs have a bad reputation because like you said before, there's a spectrum and people
Mhm.
conflate the work that let's say SEOs at an agency like ours are doing all day, which is like technical and content improvements to make sure that
Mhm.
brands content is discoverable in search engines. It doesn't happen automatically. People don't realize that.
Mhm.
There's a lot of work that goes into that. But
Oh
they're
yeah.
conflating that type of work with spam because
Mm,
for 20 years we've all kind of used the same name for it, which is SEO.
yeah. How do you approach so you mentioned like, okay, I'm going to call my 5 friends and they're all going to write blogs that I'm the best HR person. That's maybe not the best approach obviously, but what you're talking about is kind of to bring it back to the top of the conversation like interpersonal relationships and partnerships almost. I guess what's your approach to partnerships as an agency and maybe also what's your approach or advice to smaller founders when it comes to partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, I think like our team, for example, we've partnered with many different PR teams and PR
Hmm.
agencies on behalf of our
Mhm.
clients for many years, right? There's ways that, and social media teams, like there's ways that those teams and our team can work together, right? The SEOs always have recommendations about how to frame the messaging, which words to include in the messaging, which links to include in the messaging, things like that. And of course, PR teams and branding teams and social media teams and content teams have their own perspective. So we work together, right? We all try to meet in the middle somewhere. I think that's basically what we're going to be doing a lot of now. I think with AI, we're learning that third party mentions are extremely important. I would argue right now, maybe even too important. Like there's a lot of third-party sites that are literally pay to play that large language models, for whatever reason, seem to be using as like, these are the best companies because we found it on this pay to play website that you literally just have to
Yes.
pay for a listing, and now it's going to be showing up in AI search as the best company. Like, it's problematic. I don't think that'll be true forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think like it's important to partner, and it's important to provide your perspective and your recommendation and use data to support that recommendation, and always do it in a way where you're not just the SEO person who's like, I want to do this really ugly, terrible thing on the website and ruin everything that we're working on as far as like branding and user experience because we can put 20 keywords here or something, right? You have to be sensitive
Yeah.
to what the other team's goals are and ultimately what the user is going to enjoy.
Sure. Mutually beneficial to all
Right.
parties. I think that's my takeaway for partnerships. As we kind of like wrap up the conversation here, in a world where everything is becoming much more commoditized, the barrier to entry is just lowering for marketing and execution of everything. What do you feel is going to be the real competitive advantage for marketers in the future?
I think something that we're already kind of seeing is the ability to communicate effectively and share ideas effectively and honestly publicly, as much as not everybody
Mm.
wants to do that. Like
Hmm.
I'm on a 35-person SEO team. Not everybody on the team wants to go out there and be loud and share their opinions publicly for very good reason. I don't blame them.
Sure.
But
Sure.
that's actually kind of where I think marketing is going. There's a lot of personal branding involved. There's a lot of people wanting to follow other people and people that they trust. So the
Mm.
people that are doing the work of sharing consistently good information, trustworthy information, and original information. So not just
Mm.
regurgitating what other people have said, but coming up with their own original ideas. I think that's the way that people can really stand out in the future, is basically making themselves an entity that's well known for certain things online and has original ideas.
And it's so interesting, like the rise of the influencer a couple years ago, the innate value that they bring is their personality. It is their personal brand. Like even if it's unaffiliated or unassociated to finding the answer to something, it's giving value via entertainment without a script or, anything like that. So it sounds like to me, the competitive advantage in the future is going to be your personal brand and how well you connect with other people who are, yeah, looking for some sort of information, not only as an individual, but especially if you're a founder, like as an individual leading that company, like people will come to you because they feel they connect with you, and then you can back it up with strategy, data, everything else.
Yeah.
Is what it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the SEO space, like, and I only have the industry experience. I've only worked in this industry since I was in college, so I don't know
Mm-hmm.
any other industries. And I do, from what I understand, we are like, we do a lot more networking and sharing ideas than other industries might, right? But there's
Mm-hmm.
a whole lot of conferences and meetups and webinars and Slack groups and communities and people publicly sharing ideas and getting to know each other and collaborating that happens in our space. And I do think, like, even for people that are, let's say, a little bit more shy, right? There are ways that you can go to a conference, maybe like a tech SEO conference that's only focused on technical SEO, and you can meet like-minded people. And I do think like those connections and kind of like making a name for yourself where like, I'm contributing my piece to that community, and people, everyone sharing their own thing, it makes us all better, right? I
Mm-hmm.
do think that's where it's going. So the more that you can, like, even if you're shy, even if you don't want to be on the biggest stage ever, like, the more that you can kind of just be like, hey, this is me, this is what I know, and this is what I'm contributing, and be kind and polite. It's important. I do think that helps you stand out as a marketer.
Yeah, I love that. As I mentioned it here as we wrap up, I saw your Brighton SEO UK. What other appearances or presentations do you have lined up for the rest of 2025?
Yeah, so I'm about to head into another kind of whirlwind of international talks. I'm speaking in Amsterdam on August 10th. I don't remember the exact name, but I believe I'm speaking in like a football stadium there, which will be pretty
Hell
interesting.
yeah.
Then I go to SEO Oktoberfest, which is a private event, but that's in Munich, and I'll be speaking there, Munich in
Mm.
Austria. Then I'll be back in SMX Berlin, SMX Advanced in Berlin around September 30th or October 1st. That's a public event, which you could buy tickets to. And then the last two ones, I'm speaking in actually Japan in October at a Demand Sphere event. And my last one of the year is at MozCon in New York in November.
So cool. Bring it right back to home. Yeah,
Yeah, super
that's
excited.
amazing. That is awesome. Well, hopefully I'll get to see you around. I don't have any European travels lined up. I went last year, but yeah,
Nice.
it's been a while since I've been there. So yeah, thank you again for coming on to Eat Coffee with Experts, and we'll see you around.
Thanks for having me.